Hello and welcome to episode 1370 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, January 27th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning slash afternoon. Actually, it's afternoon for both. Justin Mason, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, just turned afternoon.
Just got there. Yeah, I got a little caught off guard. How you recovering from the weekend? I know your expectations were, house money. Did I know sometimes us sports fans, we go in saying that, we go through the loss and we don't act like that. Did you hold to that? Did you still think house money, we lost, it's fine, I love where we're at, or did it crush you, the Commanders' loss?
I think like as it was going on, I was crushed. But very quickly after, I was very much like, hey, or at least even by the end, I was like, hey, you know what? I know this sucked, but at the same time, yeah, it was house money, right?
So much to like about where you guys are at. 2 playoff wins, Jaden looking like a god.
yeah,
Got some key pieces. Like, he's not the only part of the team either. Like, this is a
they've got a
team.
lot of cap room coming
Yep.
into free agency. And they can address the big glaring needs at wide receiver and in corner and stuff. So and as my parents, told me time and time again growing up, if you aim low, you won't be disappointed. And I mean, that is how I live my life, right? I just don't have high expectations of myself or anybody else. And I'm very rarely disappointed at things.
Well, that's nice. I need to subscribe to that so I can stop getting disappointed by things, Well, it happens, you guys took out my team. It would have been interesting to see if you guys could go all the way with it. You would have had to take down the big Titan, the big bad Chiefs. I am of the mind that dynasties are fun to root against. Obviously, you can root for them too if that's your favorite team. So I don't hate the Chiefs or anything. I did want the Bills to win though. I wanted the Titan to fall. The Bills, obviously, such a hard luck organization with the 0 for 4 in the Super Bowls in a row. And a bunch of near misses now against this team. This has become their white whale. And, some tough plays there by Josh Allen missing the 4th down sneak, which I think he got, but was a bad call. And then the last play there where he had to kind of throw it off his back foot, chuck it up to Kincaid. Gave him a chance at a ball at least. And it was a tough catch for Kincaid. I'm not going to kill him on that, but they fall again, do the Bills, and it'll be Chiefs, Eagles. Super Bowl we saw, 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
Yeah.
It all blends together at this point because they're going for their third in a row. So
2 years ago.
2 years ago, it was the Kelsey Bowl. Yeah. And then last year it was Niners, Chiefs.
Yep.
The year before the Kelsey Bowl, it was LA Bengals. And then the year before that, it was KC again, if I recall correctly. So again, they're the Titans of the league, not the actual Titans, but the, top tier. And I get why people are rooting against them, but it'll be another Taylor Swift Bowl. And we'll see how it goes. Anyway, it's baseball time, so welcome Commanders fans, welcome Bills fans. You can fully turn your attention to baseball now, and in 2 weeks after the Super Bowl is done, that Monday that we'll come back, we'll be super amped because it'll be fully baseball time. Let's continue our Keystone discussion. However, you said we got some breaking news. I don't know what it is, and you told me not to look anything up, so hit me with it.
One of your favorite players has signed a deal. And I didn't think we'd even talk about him at all this season, but Dylan Carlson signing a deal with the Orioles.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, so that had to have happened in the last hour or so.
Literally right before we jumped on, I got an alert.
I mean, I'm in. Obviously, our feelings are both well known on Carlson. I'm pro. You're not. I understand the PT is going to be light. He's going to have to fight for playing time. This is going to be a deep, deep, deep draft champions type pick. As much as I love him, I can be realistic about the outlook. But yeah, he's on a great team at least.
I don't even know how he makes this team, honestly. I mean, unless they're going
Daz Cameron's penciled in right now. What do you mean you don't know how he makes this team?
Daz Cameron's out of options too. So
because
they need
not good at baseball. I guarantee Dylan Carlson makes it over Cameron. Guaranteed.
Yeah, probably. They
guaranteed.
Need to move Heston Kjerstad is what they need to do. They need to.
I agree. Get a pitcher for him. Clear up some of the clutter.
San Diego and be like, hey, give us Dylan Cease. We'll give you Heston Kjerstad and a couple other, smaller pieces. And
sure,
let's get this done, right?
I think that would be really keen because then Kjerstad could replace Profar, right? Because who they got going in the left right now? They got Tirso or Nellis, who I believe is a prospect of some note. I don't have a
he
ton
is.
on him, but not who a championship contending team wants at their left field. And another guy that I like, but like, let's be realistic about him, Eggy Rosario. Shouts to Tim Kanak for giving me I used to call him E guy, like an idiot. Eggy Rosario, he's penciled in as their DH right now. So you're not just making up two teams here. Like that'd be an amazing fit. Kerstead out to San Diego, pitching ideally Cease, because I think they want to move some of the money there. So Cease back to Baltimore would be a great trade as a framework there.
I know we're talking outfielders. Ornelas is a really interesting guy if he's actually playing.
For sure. So, and if he does if they don't end up replacing him and he does actually get the beat on the left field job, we'll have plenty more to say about him. I just think that they would rather have him be like kind of their next man up as opposed to the guy just yet. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Dylan Carlson to Baltimore. I'm with it. We'll see. Playing time is not going to be huge, but he'll be like the first man up anytime any outfield injury happens. I still believe he has some talent.
Good defender.
We are talking pick 400 type vibe in DCs. I can't imagine he's much higher than that. So even though I am a big fan of his, let's be realistic about where we want to draft him. Carlson's ADP is 400's high, baby. 709. And it'll go up a little bit now that he has a team, but not enough to really move the needle that much. So yeah, if you like him like I do, you can get your Dylan Carlson shares very cheap, and do not overrate this move to Baltimore.
I wonder if he's gonna end up platooning some with Mullins.
I think we could definitely see that.
I mean, Mullins struggled versus lefties, and while Carlson wasn't great against him last year, he's a career 285 hitter versus lefties.
And he's a switch hitter. And Mullins quit. Or did Mullins go back to switch hitting?
No, he quit.
Or did he fully quit? Okay, I knew he had quit, and I wasn't sure if he had gone back.
That's when the breakout happened.
That's right. So, DC out to Baltimore. We'll keep track of how it goes. Let's jump back into the second base preview. Let's start with a guy that this show was very high on last year, and then injury struck, basically washed out the season, and we're kind of back here again at square one, sort of, with Matt McLain of the Cincinnati Reds. And do we still have the hype? I ask generally. I am still in, but I will say, so is the market. So it's not easy to just buy in blindly and say, let's go get this. This is a top 100 pick for a guy who, again, did not really play that much last year due to injury, ends up only getting, actually didn't play any major league games. Excuse me. How many minor league games did he play? 13 in the fall league. He missed the entire season. For some reason, I thought he played a couple weeks at the end there. Maybe he was scheduled to come back and then got hurt again. I can't remember the trajectory there. But yeah, 13 games in the Arizona Fall League is all McLain got, and he's still a top 100 pick. Are we overdoing it with Matt McLain, or do you still have the hype and love that we did last year?
I still have some hype and love for him. I'm interested to see if McLain is going to move to the outfield, because I believe when he was in Arizona Fall League, he was playing center field.
That's right. He was getting some center field reps there. Still playing second as well, and even a game at third, but got 3 games in the outfield. And when you only play 13 games, 3 games is a bit of a significant portion there for McLain.
Yeah, so, I mean, he looked, from all reports, he looked good, looked healthy. You ended the year on the field, even though it wasn't in the majors. That is a big thing. I'm worried that once people start seeing him in spring training, the price is going to shoot up. Like right now, I think the ADP is great. I'm totally fine with where he's going, but I do see myself like getting priced out if he has a really hot spring and people start getting excited again. Because I mean, this was a guy who was going really high in drafts last year before the injury, and so for me, I'm going to kind of stick to my guns and go, okay, I think Matt McLain is actually I should look at my projection as I say it. Like,
while you're pointing that up, I'll point out that I got him at 129 in Arizona at the Arizona Fall League back in November. The ADP this month in 26 draft champions leagues now has him at 98 with a max pick of 119. So you're not really getting that price. And I do agree with you that if Matt McLain comes out in spring playing well, and even if he's not playing well, if he's just playing in there, I think it goes up even more where we could see him in the 80s.
And I think he should be going like right around pick 100. So my projections currently have him as like just at pick 100. I think pick 101 is where my projections have him, and I have him for Let's see, 20 stolen bases, and where's my homers? My homers have disappeared off my sheet. There we go. 17 home runs.
Okay.
And a 268, 347, 492 triple slash. So
that'd be great.
I'd be totally fine with that, and I do think the Reds should be better offensively this year than they were last year. So like I like McLain. I just if the ADP gets out of control, if people start really kind of jumping back on board, because I do think there are drafts where people just kind of forget about him because he wasn't on the field last year.
For sure.
And I think that in itself, and then once he starts playing games, he's going to rise, and probably I'll get priced out at that point.
I do worry that I will too. So, I already secured one share, might try to get another in some winter stuff here, because March, the price could be just a bit too expensive for McLain. Even though I am a big fan, it's just like you start pushing them up above some guys that, Semien, we talked a bunch about last episode. I think I'm just going to go with the stable vet, Marcus Semien, over McLain, and I do think he could leapfrog him by the time the draft season rolls around. Let's move to Nico Hoerner, who is a very specific type of profile where you're getting that speed and batting average upside and not much else. So, it is one of those situations where what can you utilize what he delivers, and do you have enough power to cover? Then you have to throw in the fact that an elbow injury now puts opening day up in the air a little bit. So I'm going to start more with his price point. Do you think 205 is a good enough discount for this injury concern? That is the January ADP for Nico Hoerner, because right now we just don't know. It's up in the air, and we'll get more information as the spring goes. But if you're doing a winter draft right now, is a early 200s pick okay for Hoerner, or a little too scary for you?
I think it really depends on your format. If you're doing like a draft champions right now, I'm okay with it, because you're gonna put other guys on your bench that can cover. If you're doing a regular fab league and you don't have a lot of IL spots, you don't have any IL spots, I'm probably not drafting him right now. I'm going to wait and see.
I think I agree with both those points.
The reports are fairly good. It sounds like there is a chance he's going to be ready for opening day, but that never seems to work out the way it's supposed to, right? Like, just like we were supposed to get like Acuna a couple years back, right? Like, oh, he's going to be ready a week or two into the season. And then it was like 2 months into the season. You're like, okay, well, now I'm holding this guy on my roster. I can't drop him because he's a really, really good and someone will pick him up. But now I'm kind of limited in my bench spots. So.
And I can just hear Colette's voice in my head talking about these injury concerns and how you should always tack on extra to the timeline just to be safe, because they give the positive spin that they're hoping for, and we just never know. By the way, we didn't mention it. I mean, we've talked about him moving there before, but Gavin Lux moving to Cincinnati ups that chance that McLain goes to the outfield. I should have mentioned that when we were talking about McLain there. So if you are, and that does add to his potential value, because second base and outfield will be a fun dual combo there. So I just wanted to add that in on McLain, because I'd kind of forgotten about that when we were talking about it. But back to Nico, went 943 in 2023 and then 731 last year. So you did lose 12 steals and 10 points of batting average, went from 283 to 273. I think that's a range of outcomes thing, losing 2 homers, 12 steals, and 10 points of batting average. I guess if the elbow is a concern, you could see maybe more of the same or even a little bit worse. But I do think that the upside of getting back to 2023 is certainly there. And he's the kind of guy that you could spike a 300 average with and nobody would be that surprised from Hoerner. So there is some upside, but you do have to protect because the power, because that double digits are very unlikely, and if they are, it's going to be very low double digits. He does have a 10 homer season, but it's been 10, 9, and 7 the last 3 years for Hoerner. So I think you just want to plan appropriately and make sure you're getting some mashers to cover him.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so Nico Hoerner there. From him, we move to a masher that you could also put on your team, and maybe he covers Hoerner early if you need to, and then you can move him elsewhere later. That's Brandon Lowe. In fact, he himself might need to be covered for at a certain point, because he only has 109 and 107 games the last 2 years. However, in those smaller samples, he's still put up very nice seasons, 21 homers in each, 68 and 58 ribbies the last 2 years, 7 and 5 steals, 231 and 244 batting averages. So kind of what you see is what you get in that low 100s game count. Sure, there is the upside for more if he can spike health. He's played 149 before. but I wonder if your projection hewed more closely to the 100 to 115 game range, or did you see something more where he could get back into the 130 plus with Brandon Lowe?
So to be honest, Lau's a projection I'm going to be doing tonight. So
okay.
I have not finished this projection.
You're in your home stretch of hitter projections.
I'm staying up all night if I have to finish my hitter projections. But Lau's a guy I'm still kind of working on. Here's the thing, like I've always loved Brandon Lowe. Like
he's really fun.
Since that season where he popped 39 home runs, I've just been a massive fan. And in spite of the fact that like he does not play a lot of games, like he still gives you 20 home runs and a subpar average, but not a terrible one. And now he's moving to a fantastic park. That
right.
That is going to be it's going to be great for his power. I love Lowe in shallower formats. I like him in kind of your traditional 15-team leagues, but he's going to miss time, and there's going to be times where he platoons, and like there's you can't really pencil in 550 plate appearances when the last time he got over 450 was 2021.
Yeah, so that's a great point.
When you're looking for a guy with volume in your deeper leagues, in your 15-team leagues, I don't think you should be drafting Brandon Lowe as much. But in 10s and 12s, like especially if you've got daily lineup moves, like I love Brandon Lowe. I think he could have a massive season this year.
I do too. I echo everything on Brandon Lowe there. I cannot wait. I do need to keep remembering that they're not in the Trop this year, because you brought that up and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great point. And I do like, you talk about being in the deeper league and not knowing that you almost certainly will not get a huge volume from Lowe. That would be the upside of a great outcome season. I don't mind mixing in a guy or two like that with some of the playing time stalwarts. So like, just staying at the same position to make it easy. If I get like a Brendan Donovan, who I think is a solid bet to play a bunch, he did last year, and when he's healthy, he will. Or like a Gleyber Torres, who again, if he's healthy, he's playing every day for the Tigers. If I got a couple guys like that on the roster that are giving me that consistent volume, I don't mind taking a shot on Lowe, even in a deeper league where it might be tougher to replace him, because I'm getting that volume elsewhere. So again, it's always about balance and making sure that you don't have too many of the Lowes, because then you're on the waiver wire all the time. And in a 15-team league, that sucker dries up quickly. So it is a good point to remember, but give me what he can do in 450 plate appearances.
Especially if you draft like a Brandon Donovan is a perfect guy, because you can draft him for the outfield and then move him to second base.
Exactly. Yes.
So like, I think that is like a perfect pairing, and they are going right around each other anyways. So like that's you could double tap there and be like, okay, now I feel pretty good about, at least when Lowe goes out, I can throw Brandon Donovan in there.
Yep, couldn't agree more. And Donovan at pick 235, Brandon Lowe very close behind at 243 there in the January ADP. Let's go back to more of a Nico Hoerner type here, at least as far as the speed component driving his value. Ceddanne Rafaela, and I mentioned him earlier, kind of a Tim Kanak show, because he's the one who put me on Rafaela a couple of years ago now. And so now here we are in 2024 or in 2025, after a big 2024 breakout. More power than Nico, so not a direct 1-to-1 there. And I guess not as that was a dog shit comp. Can I just eat that? I'll eat that. There's nothing that's similar there. They're both baseball players. Okay, that's it. Mm-hmm. That was a shit comp. He's very fast, and I think that's why I made the comp, but that's where it stops. 15 homers, way more than you're going to get from Nico, and only 19 for 29 on the bases, so not nearly as smart of a base runner as Nico. So that's why that comp absolutely blows, but Rafaela does not. And so despite some of the kinks in the armor there with a 246 average and only a 274 OBP, I still like that in a flawed debut season, you went 15-19 there from Rafaela, 75 ribbies, 70 runs. Not a bad year. What does he do for a follow-up at age 24, Ceddanne Rafaela?
Okay, so there's a comp, and I think some people are going to be really
Nico
excited
Hoerner?
by it. It's not Nico Hoerner. No, so there is a comp here that I think some people are going to get really excited about, because this guy continuously goes in the first 3 to 5 rounds of fantasy drafts. At least I think he's still going. Let me see where this guy is still going. Yeah, he's still going top 40 picks.
Okay.
It's Michael Harris second.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Got some power, got plenty of speed, good defender, but has some terrible swing decisions, like really, really bad swing decisions, which is one of the reasons I've been scared off of Michael Harris. Now,
especially at his elevated price point.
Yeah. Now, Rafaela has health that Harris has not necessarily shown, or at least he hasn't shown the, a propensity to get injured and banged up. But we're talking about a guy who in his minimal time at the major league level has a sub 80% zone contact percentage, which is that line, that threshold that I go, is this guy really a major leaguer? Now the tools are really, really loud, like the physical gifts. He's fast. He's got power. He's a really good defender. The Red Sox really, really love him. And it's why they gave him a long-term deal through 2031.
That's right.
So I think he's going to play, but there are going to be stretches in which he's almost unusable. And we saw that last season where hey, he was great. He was hot. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this dude can't hit anything. Right. So, and he would lose playing time, and become more of a utility guy as opposed to a regular. So I think there is a lot to still develop with Rafaela. And honestly, I think if they hadn't given him this contract, he would probably start the year in AAA just to work on things. But I mean, Rafaela, I believe, and I'm going to double check these stats I'm about to try to give off the top of my head. Rafaela had, I believe, the worst O swing percentage of any qualified hitter.
Oh, wow.
In all of baseball. He did. It was 49.5%. And then I believe it's the 8th worst in zone contact rate. Yes. Yeah, that is correct. So I do remember this. So and then you add on hey, swing strike rate was, one of the worst in the league too, I believe. Yeah, second worst in the league.
He doesn't have enough power for that, right? Usually you can justify that better if you're a power masher, but that's not Rafaela's game. He's got some pop, but not crazy pop.
So do I think that Rafaela could be really, really valuable in fantasy? Absolutely. We've seen what Michael Harris has done, right? Now, I think Michael Harris is a much better in-zone hitter than Rafaela is. So the other comp I'll give you that kind of gives you a little bit more of an idea of kind of what we're talking about is Zack Gelof. I think
a big swing and miss type guy there.
Yeah. I think he's a very similar hitter in that regard to Zack Gelof. Now Gelof plays, right? Now I think they're going to both play, I think, for different reasons. So I think Rafael could have a 2020 type season, or even better. But it may come with a 220 batting average. Rafael is going to play because of that defense and that contract, and Gelof is going to play because he plays for the A's. So, if you can load up the front end of your roster with guys who are going to protect that batting average, because I think you're going to need it if you draft a guy like Rafaela or Gelof, that's great. It'll work, or it should work to a certain extent. But in head-to-head leagues, if you're in head-to-head points leagues, head-to-head categories leagues, do not draft these guys. These are the guys that kill you week to week, right? Because they go through a 2 or 3 week stretch where they're just terrible, and then they go through a 2 or 3 week stretch where they're great, and that can destroy you in a head-to-head league. So this is for me, in a roto league where I have built up my batting average early, I've got no problem taking Rafaela, but he's usually not a guy that ends up on my roster.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair with Rafaela. I mean, he has a 10-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, which is great if you're a pitcher, not so much if you're a hitter. Also want to point out 10-game eligibility here. As always, we're casting a wider net here, so check your league rules, of course. But if it's 10-game eligibility, he'll be there for second, short, and the outfield. He has short and outfield in every format with 80-plus games in both. Just the 10 at second and 4 at third. So if you have a 1-game eligibility, Ceddanne Rafaela also throws in third base. But yeah, it's a flawed profile, but there is upside to be mined with the power speed there. We've seen this type of profile before, though. You know that it can run very hot, very cold, as Justin said. Let's go to Bryce. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Brett just asked in the chat, hey, does he run enough for all these slots to be worth it? Not to me. And this is
No.
why he does not end up on. He's not going to end up on my roster. I love Ceddanne Rafaela when I was getting him at pick 700 last year in November.
Right.
When he got up to like pick 180, that's when I was like, what are people doing here?
Maybe they are like me, impressing like his raw speed as Nico Hoerner-esque, like I did, and thinking like he's got 30 plus steal upside. And I mean, he has that upside, but that's not his foundation. And he needs to make better decisions. Again, Ceddanne Rafaela was 19 for 29 last year on the bases. That's bad. And so what if he gets a yellow light? And so then he's more in like the 15-15 range with a crappy batting average. And then we don't know where the runs and ribbies are going to be because he's going to be bottom half of the order too, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned that, like, you know, like you mentioned the bad comp of Hoerner. Like the big thing that Hoerner does is Hoerner gets on base. He doesn't walk a ton, but he makes 90% in zone contact or 90+% in zone contact.
Yeah, that's where the comp was the worst, was the hitting profile. It's an insult to Hoerner to put Rafaela in there with him. So my bad on that one.
Like this, like the another comp, if we want to do a third comp, for Rafaela, it's like a more powerful version of Billy Hamilton, right? It's a guy who's got some pop, but like, hey, you could be out of the league because you just don't hit enough or walk enough to get on base to utilize that speed.
At least Billy ran every time he was on, but Boston just doesn't do that. So I don't think Rafaela has that sort of blazing green light that Billy Hamilton did. But in terms of the skills, I do see some parallels there. And it's not necessarily a positive. Let's go to somebody who's a bit more stable, a bit more bankable here. And it's Bryson Stott. And he's coming off a little bit of a tough one last year in terms of the batting average because he lost 35 points going from 280 to 245. However, the 1132 that you got in the homers and steals wasn't far off of what you got in 2023 when it was 1531. So counting categories still held pretty firm for you. The big batting average fall off, is there a reason for concern with Stott there, or can he rebound? Because now if you look at it, 2 of the 3 years have been wretched batting averages, but that middle year, that 2023, is kind of the high end that you shoot for, 280, 1531. Is that in the cards, or is that going to live as a high watermark for Bryson Stott?
I think that's probably the high watermark, but I do think the batting average bounces back a little bit. He had a 254 XBA, and you know the BABIP did drop quite a bit from 2023. Now I think his BABIP was inflated in 2023, so I think the truth is just somewhere in the middle. And I'm pretty sure. Let's see, my projection. I have him at 259 for a batting average.
Okay, I can live with that for sure.
13 home runs, 35 stolen bases. Is what I have projected, which for me, at least in a 12-team league, because right now I just have my projections run for 12-team leagues, has him as like a top 7 second baseman.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I'll take that season all day long for Bryson Stott.
Yeah, so I mean, I really like Bryson Stott. I like the price right now, and you know, I do think that this. You know, he's going to be able to score up, you know, fair amount of runs on this Philadelphia squad, and you know, he's a decent defender. He walks, he doesn't strike out, makes a lot of contact. Like I think there's a lot to like here, Bryson Stott. I don't know that we ever see like a major power surge or anything from him. I think that 15 home runs in 2023 is probably the high water mark, and he's more of, you know, kind of a 11 to 13 type of dude. And that's where I think I have him at 13 this projected for this year. But like you got a bunch of stolen bases. Again, this is a roster construction issue. You need to make sure you're getting your power kind of up front with a guy like Bryson Stott. But he's going to give you a bunch of speed on a good team. So
Stott or Hoerner? Like neutral team build. Okay. Stott. So because you think of more bankable power output?
I don't know. I just don't know what.
Well, the health too for Hoerner.
Yeah. Right now, I have Hoerner projected for 520 plate appearances. I have Stott projected for 100 more.
I think that's totally fair, and then that can evolve as the spring goes if Hoerner's looking better, and then if it's healthy, is it Hoerner or is it just a coin flip at that point? If Hoerner's healthy,
one of the things I love about this Tanner Bell Smart Fantasy Baseball sheet, I will continue to push that over and over again. If I gave Hoerner and Stott the same amount of plate appearances, I would have Hoerner a little bit higher.
Okay. So it
literally like one spot above.
So basically becomes a coin flip at that point if Hoerner's healthy, which again, we'll be tracking that all throughout the rest of the winter and into the spring. Okay, cool. So yeah, and I'm with you on Stott. I think he's pretty solid, right there in like the top.
But I mean, here's
12.
the interesting thing. Like currently I've got like, let's see, I've got Hoerner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16th. So 16th, those 100 plate appearances bust Hoerner up to like right where Stott is at 6. I have Stott as my 6th second baseman.
I mean, that's a big deal.
There is a massive like blob of second baseman.
Right. Like huge glob at second base. And I totally agree.
Pretty much like Stott all the way down to Jackson Holliday. You know, like it's, I mean, a plate of, 50 plate appearances here, 50 plate appearances there can change everybody's value in this massive grouping, most of them which we're talking about today.
Right. And it can be such a huge thing. That's why I like the guy that maybe doesn't improve their skills a ton, but moves from 400 to 600 plate appearances because a spot opens up, can be a huge breakout, even if they were the same player just for 200 more plate appearances. And somebody who could be that, maybe not for 200 more, because he did get 556 last year. But I'm curious how you feel about your boy Colt Keith, going for his encore, because he had 556 plate appearances last year, got off to a very slow start, had a nice summer there. I think, wasn't as strong in September, but like we got to see what the excitement was about there in that summer, specifically July. Like that's when he really popped off. May and July, he popped off. April was horrendous. June was mediocre. And then August and September were also pretty mediocre there, where the BABIPs were there, but the power wasn't. So maybe he just got a little tired as the season went on, but through his first full season, add it all up, and it's a 96 OPS plus. So essentially league average, 13 homers, 7 steals, and you got to see the multi-week periods of high quality from Keith. Did he do enough for you to stay on board as one of your faves? And what do you like for season 2 out of Colt Keith?
Yeah, so full disclosure, another one of these guys I'm going to do is projection tonight. Okay. But I can tell you it's going to be a really, really good projection. I just love Colt Keith.
He just strikes the ball so well. Like when he's on, I mean, I'm so impressed by him. And now moving to first base, we should point out too, which is really interesting because now he'll have first, second, and thus corner middle as well.
Yeah, and I know like some people might be worried about like, hey, hit the ball on the ground a little bit too much, launch angle is a little bit low. Like, I think he's gonna like figure things out. Like, I mean, this is a guy that has shown some pretty extreme power ability in the minor leagues. Hasn't fully translated, but he, like you said, he just strikes the ball so darn well and makes really, really good in-zone contact for a guy with what is burgeoning power. Like the power hasn't quite shown up yet at the major league level, but he was 89% zone contact. And I think someone asked me to keep referencing league average is about 85 to 86%.
Yeah, just to give that frame of reference there, so you know
and
how much better or worse the number is.
I will actually bring up the exact amount. It was 85.8. So just about
so
86.
Call it 86. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or actually, is that correct? Now I've got to double check. Yes, that is correct. So
while you're double checking that, I just want to point out too, Keith, another guy that got the big contract early before he ever debuted, got a 6-year deal. So the team fully believes in him, and that's why they were never really daunted by the awful April. They were going to let a rookie play through it. And, they were rewarded there. First off, he had a 192 BABIP in April. It was pretty clear he was hitting into some bad luck if you were like me and watch the Tigers consistently. But then to find the success in May, have a little bit of a June swoon, and then pop off big in July and then be okay down the stretch. I think it ended up being an up and down season, but the bottom line was that this guy can hang in the majors, and I think he's going to be really, really good. I think we could see a power jump even this year, like up 18 to 20, which wouldn't be massive, but he hit 13 last year. So if you start creeping toward 20, but I think where he could really gain is the batting average. I think Colt Keith can be a 300 average type of guy. Like at his best, if everything pans out, I think he could be somebody that hits in the 300s with mid 20s to upper 20s power as like a middle of the order stud. Now that could be 2-3 years off. He's 23 this year. That's the thing too. He's a baby. So we got some time here with him. He doesn't have to make it all come together this year. And I think he's being drafted very fairly. Pick 252 is not that expensive for somebody who did have a little bit of hype last year as a breakout guy. Obviously, you were very much hyping him. This show was very high on Colt Keith. I think he's being priced. There's nothing wrong with that. 252 seems like you're going to get him a bunch, given how much you love him.
Yeah, I've already drafted him a few times. I love Colt Keith. Like I agree with you. I think there is a season at some point where Colt Keith could be like a 30-plus homer dude with like a 290 kind of batting average. And it could come as early as this season. I don't know that it is going to come as early as this season because he is still very young. He's only 23 years old. He's going to turn 24 in August. But like all the skills are there for Colt Keith.
Gives me some Rendon vibes. Colt Keith gives me some Anthony Rendon vibes, and his best season was in the Juiced Ball 2019, but he ripped 34 homers with a 319 average. So I am really eager to see what Keith can do for an encore, obviously being a Tigers fan.
You look at what he did in the minor leagues in 2023 at 27 home runs with a 306, 380, 552. Like I'm not projecting him, or I won't when I do his projection. I'm not going to project him for that kind of output, but like I'm gonna be over where like all the other projection systems are. Like all the other projection systems have 15, 16 home runs at 260 some batting average. I'm probably gonna have him a little bit higher batting average, but quite a few more home runs. I really like Colt Keith. I think he is kind of the steal of this position right now.
I agree. I think he's very easy to like at that price point specifically. Again, it's 252.
Plus, like you mentioned, he gets first base eligibility really early on in the season.
Yeah, and stays at the top of the order too. And one more thing, I know we're glazing him pretty good here, but really hung in there against lefties, and that was another like seasonal evolution there. And he had a 421 BABIP. That's pretty fortunate. But the plate appearances that he took against lefties, again, this comes from watching every single day. And I know not everybody can watch every team every day. Not even I can. But obviously I watch my Tigers all the time. And I was never worried if it was a key at bat versus a lefty that Keith came up in. I'm like, he's going to stay in there. And, you know, the power wasn't crazy. He only hit one homer. And like I said, he's not going to run a 421 BABIP again. But I don't think he needs to be platooned. And those supplemental plate appearances can give you the extra runs and ribbies. So I think they're going to commit to him as a full-timer. Let's go to a guy you did mention a little bit earlier there, saying he's the back end of the big second base glob because he has a giant question mark right now, and it's Jackson Holliday. Now, obviously, former number one overall, had a few false starts this year as a big-time waiver pickup that people were dropping a bunch of money on, only for it to not really pan out. Add it all up, it was 208 plate appearances of a 66 WRC plus with 5 homers, 4 steals. So a flop, but he's 20. I think if you run away from him completely, you're making a mistake. But is he ready for showtime in year 2? He goes around pick 241, so ahead of Lowe, Keith, your boy Jonathan India, like some established guys. Are you ready to pay a relative premium? I don't want to overstate it, but like, are you paying a price here on Holliday? Do you think he can come together in year 2, or is it still going to be a little up and down for the 21-year-old?
I'm not taking him over those guys. Maybe I'd take him over India. Because I don't love India going to Kansas City, but
that's right.
I don't know what he's going to be. He's still only 21. He literally just turned 21 last month. And like he's just so young and so raw. I do think at some point he's going to turn himself into a really good fantasy player, a guy that's going to have power, speed, and a pretty darn good hit tool.
Cops coming to get you.
Yeah. They clearly don't like the fact that I'm saying
it's Matt Holliday.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, is it going to happen this year? Because there's not much under the hood that tells you, like, hey.
No, you're betting on the pedigree. Yeah, I got nothing in this MLB sample that I can point to, which is fine. It's a small sample anyway. So like people that do love him, if they're just leaning on the mic, I almost said the microwave work instead of the minor league work. I don't know why my brain wanted to say microwave there, but even if you are just kind of relying,
he's gonna cook.
Right, he's gonna cook quickly. So that's my brain wiring to say that he's gonna go, come together quickly this year. No, I don't know for sure, but I think it's an okay price if you're a believer. Again, those 3 guys I named, I'm also a little bit lower on India with the move to KC, so I'll focus more on Lowe and Keith. But just with those 2 going behind Holliday, it's going to be hard for me to wind up with shares because Brendan Donovan goes right ahead of him, a guy I mentioned earlier who I do like, not just for the pairing with who were we mentioning that? Who are we pairing him with? Oh, with Lowe. So yeah, I think while the price is fair, this is a situation where it's like, I agree the price is fair, but I still don't really jump on it for Holliday because I just like too many of the guys around him, and he is still such a wild card. Now I'm curious, is there anything he can do in spring that would bring you on board? Because keep in mind, even if there was a statistical jump, it would come with a price jump too. So you'd have to factor that in. But is there anything Holliday could do to where you'd get on board because of spring training?
Walks and strikeouts. That's all I'm looking at for him.
Yeah, just tightened up plate profile because it was pretty bad. I mean, it's a big part of his struggles. 33% K, 7% walk. He's better than that, but he struggled at the majors. Major leagues are hard. Breaking news. But okay, I think that's fair.
I mean, he only had 400 something plate appearances in AAA before coming up. I think he's just a young guy. There's a lot of pressure on him. Maybe first full season, first real spring training where hey, he knows he's on this team. Maybe he just looks better and makes more contact and doesn't strike out at 33% rate. He's definitely a guy to watch in spring. If he looks more comfortable, if he looks like he's a major leaguer, then he could definitely take off. I do want to say though, I don't know that Jackson Holliday is, at least right now, I'm not saying this is in the range of outcomes in the future, a stud. I don't think there is a a
fantasy stud, you mean, or even a real life stud?
Yeah, okay. A fantasy stud. So I think what he is he's potentially Marcus Semien.
Yes.
Who can be a stud, right? And has had studly seasons, but I think we've got to look at him as more like a premium accumulator kind of dude who's gonna play every day because he is a future face of this franchise. But I don't know if the power is fully developed. I don't know how much they're gonna let him run. I don't know if there is a carrying tool necessarily, except for the fact that he can do everything right now. And so even if he does break out this season, I don't think you're looking at Jackson Holliday being a first round pick in 2026.
No, I completely agree with that. And so that also taps the brakes for me a little bit, even at this 240 price point, because again, there's just too many guys around that I also like.
Yeah, I just can't pass up on Colt Keith. I can't pass up on Brandon Lowe, those kind of guys in take Holliday personally.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So let's move on from Holliday and go to another guy that we mentioned earlier in passing, unfortunately in a negative light. But let's expound a little bit on Zack Gelof. You comped him a little bit to Ceddanne Rafaela, which I think is very apropos. I will say, not to backpat, I take my L's when they're deserved, but he was such an easy fade last year. There was just no way that 69 game sample, while it was very nice, there was no way that you should be doubling it or even double minus a little bit. I appreciated it. I got it on my team and he helped me move up the standings a little bit when he went 14-14 in those 300 plate appearances. But it seemed like a hot run that there was never going to be a building block for his 2024 season. Now, he fell off probably more than I suspected. I didn't have him down for an 82 OPS plus and an AL best 188 strikeouts. And he did still get 17 homers and 25 steals. So I want to be clear on that. It's not like he was a complete flop. But he had 32 ribbies. Runs batted in those 69 games and wound up with 49 this year in 138 games. So that's pretty bad. I know part of that is the team context, but they were better this year than they were in 2023. So I don't even know that can be given to him as an excuse. I know it's the swing and miss with Gelof. Is this just going to be part of his game where he's going to be this kind of Baez, Morel, and then Rafaela, as you mentioned, type guy where you're going to get the fantasy juice on the homers and steals, but it's probably going to come with a dog shit average.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's interesting. He's a righty that really struggled against lefties. He had 138 against left-hand pitching last year.
That's what was crazy, and I do think that should get better because the 206 BABIP. Yeah. But that was really, really hurting. He wasn't even getting the juice against the strong side platoon for Gelof, and so that sucked.
But I mean, this again, goes back to just the core underlying skills are bad. In terms of his contact skills, he had a 76% in zone contact number, and that was the third worst in baseball. right behind, like you just mentioned, Christopher Morel, right? So, and like he doesn't have good plate discipline. Like there's a lot that you don't like about.
So he did coming up, and I haven't deep dove this, but Gelof has a bunch of double-digit walk rates coming up. Do you think he's just taking advantage down in the minors there, or getting too eager in the majors? Like, what do you think the disconnect is when somebody has a bunch of 10s, 12s, a 13 in AAA back in 2023, and then drops down to 7% last year for Gelof? Do you have any idea what that might be without being able to deep dive it right now on the show?
My guess is just taking advantage of bad pitching.
Compared with the opposition knowing that he's going to swing and miss a bunch, and so they're maybe attacking him more too, and not giving him the chance to get as many walks either. I bet.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at like the difference between like, in 2024 in AAA when he was walking at a 10% rate, the zone percentage was 41.5%, as opposed to in the major leagues, they attacked him in the zone at 53.5%, right? Like that's and we've talked about before, like zone percentage is like a small move, 1 or 2%, it can be huge. So when you're talking about an 8% jump of pitchers attacking you because they don't think you can hit it in the zone, like that's a problem. Now, that being said, we said a bunch of bad things about Zack Gelof. He is going to play. He is in Oakland. They don't really have anybody else. Well,
he's not in Oakland. How dare you?
Which is good though for him, because he struggled in the Oakland Coliseum last year. Zack Gelof hit 186 at home and 235 on the road. So, and he only had 6 of his 17 home runs at home. So, like, yes, like leaving the Coliseum is going to be good for him. And if you don't care about batting average, like this is one of those punt batting average types of dudes, or you like, you don't want to load your team up completely with these kind of guys, but like, hey, I think there's a range of outcomes where he hits 235.
Sure. And he hit 267 in the big half season sample of 2023 too.
You won't do that, but
no, I know. I'm just saying it's on the sheet. It's at least on his card, so you can maybe dream on that for a perfect season. You would never go in expecting that from Gelof with these skills.
And the park won't be amazing, but it will be amazing for him to leave the Oakland Coliseum. So, like, someone asked me in my chat earlier today, like, is Zack Gelof gonna? I think the question was, can he have a 2020 690 OPS season? And I said the 690 OPS to me is a little difficult, considering I don't know where the batting average and on base percentage is going to look like. But 2020, I think he's going to do 2020 because I think he's going to play every day, and I think he'll volume his way to that.
Yeah, I think 2020 is certainly possible. He did miss a little bit of time this past year, 138 games, and still hit 17 with 25 steals.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 2020 piece, he can get there because they let him run, and he's smart. 25 for 28. So that the Rafaela comp does not hold to the base running there for Gelof. But the swing and miss, the awful average, you do need to plan for that because, yeah, I'm with you that the upside is probably closer to the 230s, 240s. Don't get too drunk off of that 267 from 2023 because I think it was also, 331 BABIP. There was a big BABIP to go with it. And I just don't know that you can plan for that.
There's a cautionary tale here, and it's from his own team, because we said very similar things for different reasons, but similar things about Esteury Ruiz last year in terms of, hey, he's in Oakland, he's going to play. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't.
Well, because he dared to. Well, I mean, it definitely wasn't related to him speaking out against the team.
But I'm just saying, Oakland has you're right. They really don't really care about baseball. And so,
he played 29 games. That's crazy, dude.
They could easily, the Athletics could easily just send him down for whatever reason, and all of a sudden he's not playing. So, the floor is not in the major leagues. The upside, I think, is 2025, 2030.
And that's cool. But yeah, pick 212. I don't know. I'm just not there, and I'm not going to list all the same second basemen again. But the ones in the 230s that I prefer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah.
I just don't see myself getting Gelof.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Gleyber. I mentioned him a little bit earlier as somebody who is at least a volume play, because in Detroit, I think he is going to play. We know that AJ Hinch is not averse to platoons and everything, but you can't platoon every spot. And I think you're going to have a few stalwart spots, and as long as Gleyber's healthy, he's playing every single day. And you look at it, the last several years, 500 plus plate appearances in 4 of them, 665 or more in the last 2 years. So he's an everyday type of guy. However, the results fluctuate quite a bit. And now he's going to definitely a worse park in Comerica versus Yankee Stadium. What do we get here? I like the 1-year gamble for my ball club. It doesn't necessarily take them out of Bregman. I know he hasn't signed anywhere yet, and so they could still put him over at third because Gleyber's going to play second. That's why Keith is going to first. What do we get here? Because we're coming off a 15-4 season after back-to-back 20-something with double-digit steals, 25 and 24 on the homers, 13 and 10 on the steals. So he falls all the way down to 15-4 this year. Will the real Gleyber stand up? What do we like this year? Are you in on him in Detroit?
I mean, it was a tale of 2 halves last year for Gleyber. He had 8 home runs with a 231 batting average in the first half, and in the second half, he hit 7 home runs with 292 batting average. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Okay. I don't know that we're ever going to see the 2022, 2023 versions of Gleyber again in terms of the power. I think he's probably I have him for 18 home runs and like a 267 batting average. I think that is much more in line, 257 batting average. I think that's much more in line with where he's going to be, especially in Detroit. The question is where they can hit him in the lineup. The Yankees were leading him off last year for the second half, and he seemed really, really comfortable at that spot.
I like the 2 spot that roster resource has 2 right now. I think that makes the most sense to break up the lefties because Parker Meadows number 1, lefty, and then Gleyber at 2, and then lefty with Green and Carpenter, then Vierling, then Keith. Like Keith could go in that 2 spot, but then you got 4 lefties in a row. Like that's the tough part there. That it does make sense for Gleyber to be there. Now, if Parker Meadows is more early season Meadows than he is later season, he could get ousted from there, and then you go Torres at the top, Keith 2. But coming into the season, they want to go Meadows, Torres, Green, Carpenter, which I think is a pretty robust top 4 there for the Tigers.
The interesting thing for me is that Gleyber moved to that leadoff spot, but from the leadoff spot, like only had those 4 stolen bases.
That stopped running for whatever reason.
Like in the second half, he did not. I don't think he even attempted a stolen base.
Was it? So I can't recall if he was dealing with anything day to day because he didn't miss time. He played 154 games, so there was nothing that took him out. But you never know if a guy's like nursing something on the lower half in season, or even on like their hands or arms, right? Because if you do head first slides, you'd want to protect yourself there. So I don't know.
It may just be like, hey, you're hitting in front of Judge and Soto. Don't
go anywhere. Yes, that could absolutely be it.
Like it could be something like that, and maybe Detroit goes, "Hey, we don't have a Judge or Soto, so you're free to move a little bit more."
We have better with Carpenter. You're right.
Yeah, but like Detroit's also a team that doesn't run very much.
That's what I was going to bring up.
There were 26 in the majors in stolen bases last year, and the Yankees were, I think, middle of the pack, right? If I'm remembering,
I'd plan for 6 or 7 steals from Gleyber.
Yankees were 24th, so right there. So just a little bit above Detroit. So I don't know that I'm planning for more than like 5 stolen bases.
Yeah. Top end is 7, 8 in a projection, most that I would give Gleyber. I'm paying for 4 or 5. Yep.
Yeah, I
think that's
5,
fair.
So.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean that puts him as probably outside the top 15 to 20 second baseman. So kind of just a boring accumulator type dude that is better in deeper leagues as your MI.
And his price point is outside of that top 15 as well at 17th, pick 227. Again, not going to mention all those guys that I'm probably going to like a little bit later, but I don't hate Gleyber. He's kind of in that group that also explains why I wouldn't take Gelof. Like I would take Gleyber around later, even though he doesn't bring the speed. Maybe there's a little Tigers homerism there. Just I'd be able to watch, him every day, but I think it's a fine place for him to play. It's not Yankee Stadium, but I think it's going to be another 600 plate appearance season of decent work. I agree with you. Deeper league MI is perfect for him. Let's move on to the next tier here, and let's start with Luis Rengifo for the Angels. Now, this is a guy that is a nice little Swiss Army knife. He has, let's see what eligibility he has next year. Rengifo is going to have second and third universally. I'll check to see if he has anything where he has a lower threshold. But he's going to have second and third in all leagues where 20 games is a minimum. Pick 163 here for 6 homers and 24 steals, but a 300 average. Is that legit? Because it was back-to-back 264 seasons with more power, 17 and 16 homers, and less speed, 6 steals each. And then last year he flipped things. He ditched some of the power, upped the speed by 4x from 6 to 24 steals, and then upped the average from 264 to 300 of these two types here, which is the real Rengifo.
I mean, I think Rengifo is really good. So my projection on Rengifo is I have him for just 515 plate appearances, but 13 home runs and 34 stolen bases. I really think he is just a really good player that the Angels, for some reason, just haven't figured out like how good he is. He can play a lot of different positions for them. Does not strike out, a 14.5% strikeout rate last year. He doesn't walk a ton, but when you're not striking out very much, you're putting the ball in play quite a bit. 87.6% zone contact, above that league average number. And the league average number is actually 85.2%. So he's a good amount above league average. He does swing outside of the zone a little bit too much, but I'm okay with that. There isn't a ton of power because he puts the ball on the ground, but he does hit the ball hard on the ground. And I think that the batting average is going to at least be decent, right? It's not going to be 300 like we saw last year, but I would say 265-ish. And
which would take him back to where he's been the last 2 years, and that's fine. 264 was what he had the last 2 years, and the projections agree with you for Rengifo, and they put him in that 260s range. Now, all the projections give him the power back. They're all in the 15 to 18 homer range, but they also bring the speed back too. So the projections believe that Rengifo can basically combine the counting categories from 20, 22, 23, and 24 as far as the power and speed. Do you believe he can do both? 15-something homers with 20-something steals?
I have him for 13 homers and for 30-plus steals.
That'd be great too.
Yeah, so I don't think the power is going to be like high teens. He just does not elevate the ball. That's not his game. That's not what he's trying to do. He's trying to make a lot of contact, hit the ball hard, sometimes on the ground, but a lot of line drives and get on base. Via the hit. I mean, he's very Nico Hoerner-ish in a lot of ways. And we all know how much I love a healthy Nico Hoerner. The reason I love him right now is because I don't know that he's healthy. So I like this profile, and I like the fact that he is eligible at third, second, and short, a guy that you can move around. And I think this is finally kind of the year where they just give him free reign to play. I could be wrong because it's the Angels.
Here's hoping, though, right? Because, he should absolutely get that for Rengifo because he keeps showing that he's a damn good player for them. Commit to him, for God's sakes. So, we'll see how that goes. And I should point out that those 24 steals came in 78 games. I didn't even point out that. And that's part of the power dip, too.
And that's part of the reason why I've got his projection for stolen bases much higher. I mean, let's not forget, Ron Washington likes to run. He loves to run. And I think that they're going to give him the green. I think they're going to give Rengifo the green light. And we're going to see a bunch of stolen bases. Like I said, I don't necessarily believe a massive power jump or anything, even with the full-time playing time that I'm projected. But I do think he's going to get a crap ton of stolen bases. He'll have enough power where it's not a zero. And it'll really just depend on, can this Angels offense stay healthy around him?
Right. That will be a big deal for Rengifo because, if you can give me 550 plate appearances with Ward, Trout, and Soler surrounding him, I'm intrigued by that. But if it ends up being, one of those three and then two randos from the minors or Scott Kingery and Mickey Moniak, I'm a lot less enthused about his run and RBI potential totals there for Rengifo. But yeah, I do like him. I think he's a fun player. The dual eligibility is a little bit pricier at 177, but I think the upside is richer there. And I would definitely rather take the gamble, or not gamble, take slot in Rengifo than mess with the Hoerner discount and the potential injury there. Since you did kind of comp them a little bit, I'd rather just go for the more certain version of Rengifo. Even though he only played half season last year, there's, but he finished healthy, whereas Hoerner's coming into the season with a little bit of a health concern. All right, next up, we've got Nick Gonzalez. I like Nick Gonzalez. The thing that I'm concerned about, though, is just the simple question of, is Nick Gonzalez just a better real life player than fantasy? It's not necessarily means that you can't draft him, and there is price baked into that covers that. He's a 389 ADP. But what can we realistically expect from Gonzalez as a fantasy player?
That's the hard part, is I don't really know. And one of the other issues with Nick Gonzalez is the Pirates have a lot of these kind of second basemen that can do a little bit of everything, but don't really do much of anything. And I think that is my main problem with Gonzalez, is I think he's kind of a mediocre or a lower level accumulator. Like, if he plays full time, like, hey, he might put up an interesting stat line. Is he going to play full time though? Like, I don't know if I'm 100% buying in on that. He can hit for average. I mean, Nick Gonzalez, is above league average zone contact, 86.6%. He can hit the ball somewhat hard, max exit velocity of 110, but the hard hit percentage is about 37%. I think he is pretty boring, to be quite honest. I think you're looking at a guy who's probably like, 12 or 13 home runs and 8 or 9 or 10 stolen bases and a 270 batting average, which is fine in your deeper leagues, but out like 10s and 12s, you shouldn't even consider Nick Gonzalez.
I completely agree. And I really do like him, but unless we start seeing the batting average spike up, like 270 is just not enough. I need more. That's an empty batting average with 7 homers and 5 steals. And it was only 387 plate appearances, so you can add to it, but then that's like 12 and 9. That's still boring as hell, and you need more there. So until I really see that, I don't even really love it.
You're also talking about a guy who's hitting in the bottom of the Pirates lineup.
Yes. So I can't really get there. DC's is the only place I'd consider him, because I do think he should get a chance to play, but I'd probably just take the next guy both on our list. Oh no, he's not next on our list, but I'm going to move him up there. Next on our list and next in ADP is Jeff McNeil. I think I'd rather just take him. He has outfield eligibility. He's shown more. He's actually a little bit cheaper at pick 410 versus 389 for Gonzalez. And while I'm not super enamored with him, this is not a huge Jeff McNeil cosign, but it's just like between the two, even though he's much older at age 33, he's got the pelts on the wall. Like, we've seen him do it, whereas Gonzalez is very empty batting average right now. So I'd rather just take McNeil in a DC, and probably neither, to be honest. But what do you think about Jeff McNeil coming off a 12 homer, 5 steal season with a 238 average? That's the real tough part for him. But it was a 256 BABIP. So if you don't believe that that's real off of a 312 career, then you should see the average coming back up. He's also empty average, but he has second in outfield eligibility too. Is he doing anything for you, Jeff McNeil?
See, this is why I hate empty average guys, because
yes, me too.
There is a scenario in which the hits just don't fall. Like that, and that's what happened with Jeff McNeil last season. Is I think part of it too was like, hey, a deader ball, doesn't just affect home run hitters. It affects line drive hitters too.
That's a great call.
Those line drives that were going over the second baseman's head are now going straight to the second baseman, right? Because just a little bit of velocity off. There's nothing in this profile that excites me outside of the multi-positional eligibility. And so for me, it's like DCs or nothing. I really don't care about Jeff McNeil otherwise.
Couldn't agree more. And just in comparison to Gonzalez, I'll prefer him, but it's just not the type of player type that I'm looking for at all. Andrés Giménez is up next. He's moving to Toronto, and we did talk about him during that trade, but let's dive back in on him. He's up back at 178, so right behind Luis Rengifo here. We've seen goodness from him, but he came back down last year. He now moves to a new team. Do you like him on the turf in Toronto? Does that maybe help his batting average, smacking the ball off there? He did lose some of his power after 17 and 15 homers the last 2 years. He went 9 this past year. He did keep the steals, 30 each of the last 2 years, and the average was pretty consistent from 251 to 252. And that 297 is still twinkling back in 2022, but probably going to end up as his high watermark as well. What does Giménez do for his first year in Toronto?
I love Andrés Giménez from a defensive perspective to help those pitchers.
Oh, yeah. Yes. That's a great call.
He's going to help those pitchers from an offensive perspective.
Kevin Gossman fist pumped when they got him.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Bassett's got to be psyched too, right? That being said, from an offensive perspective, and I think I'm going to have to redo his projection a little bit tonight because I have him for 30 stolen bases, and I don't see that happening. You
don't think they let him run because I know they don't run a ton, but he has the track record.
It's not they don't run a ton.
They
were the 27th
right
team in stolen bases last year, and Cleveland was the 5th. Cleveland had more than twice the amount of stolen bases as in part of it is, hey, maybe they didn't have the guys, but
some of that's personnel, but that is a bit alarming that even a Varsho only had 12 attempts, right? And he's one of their speedier guys. That's why I picked him.
And it's not like you can say, well, he's going to hit on top of this lineup. He's not. He's going to hit 7th in this lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So,
does that maybe open him up to run more though, since he won't be in front of the studs like Vlad Jr. and Santander?
Maybe, but I can't project it, so I can't project that. I got to project him probably for 20, and
that's bad if the power doesn't come back.
Yeah, and I think the power is worse in Toronto, right? That's not as good of a stadium for him. I love him from a defensive perspective. From an offensive perspective, I don't love Andrés Giménez, and it hurts because I've been a big Andrés Giménez guy in the past. But yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to be drafting him very much this year, if at all.
I really can't push back on the concerns with him because I share some of them, especially the unknown of the speed, right? If we got word, oh yeah, we're a team that doesn't run, but Giménez is a proven guy and he's going to get to do what he gets to do. Even something a little bit more vague like that. Spring training will tell you. And even if he's getting caught, folks, it's all about SB attempts. So even if he goes 3 for 9 and you're like, damn, he got caught 6 times, that'd be okay because that means they're letting him run. And that still, in the aggregate, that still translates. The stats that matter, the reason we harp on strikeouts, walks, and stolen base attempts and powers, because those are the 4 things that the people that have studied it, like our own Jeff Zimmerman, have found in spring training that can carry some meaning. So look at Andrés Giménez's attempts to get an idea of how much they're going to let him run, because if they don't, he's not going to be a good player for fantasy.
If he only steals 13 bases this year, all of a sudden you've got a guy who's a 10 homer, 13 stolen base guy.
He's Ernie Clement.
Yeah, that's not usable in fantasy.
No, not at 177 pick average either.
And how can you pass up all those guys that we've named already?
Right.
For Giménez, especially when stolen bases are let's say he does steal 30. Fine. But stolen bases are really easily found.
That's true too. And so you're still getting the 250 and the mediocre power. So he still might not even be worth it, even with a cosign that he's going to get the run.
Hitting 7th in this lineup.
Yeah.
I think you should pass on Giménez this year.
I think so too. I think that price point is quite a bit too high. So yeah, we're not doing that. All right, our last guy today. We had a thicker tier, but as I told you at the outset, my neck is killing me. So I'm going to go lay down for a little bit after this. But I want to follow up on Luis Arraez. I remember we talked about him at first base. I can't remember if we said we would talk more at second base or not. So let's just do it. He is a very specific type. Are you thinking that he might get traded? I know that there's been some chatter of them moving money with Dylan Cease, as you mentioned, being an interesting target that they could trade. Arraez isn't making a ton, right? They have guys making way more, but I think didn't his arbitration price go up a bunch this year? He made 11 mil last year.
He's making 14 mil.
So I guess there's a world where he could be traded, but for now he's a Padre. He's leading off. He did really well with the Padres when he went there. 4 homers, 9 steals, 318 average. I know he's a very, very niche player type to draft. Do you think that, first off, let's start with, do you think he stays in San Diego? Do you believe that he's the guy that they trade, or do they keep him?
I mean, I'd say it's 50-50. I think they want to trade him. The problem is there are a lot of teams that don't like this archetype, especially from a first baseman.
Not fun. Yeah, first base too. Like, he does have second base eligibility, and he has legit second base eligibility, so it's not like 10 game or anything. But yeah, as a first baseman,
he's not.
Yeah, that's the thing too. He sucks defensively. You can't get 4 homers out of first base. You just can't.
And so here's the thing. I actually now I'm going to say I don't think he gets traded, because I think there are probably about 50% of teams that go, we don't like this archetype. Right. And then there's 50% of those teams that go, well, we don't want to pay $14 million for this.
Bingo.
And then there's another half that goes, he's also bad defensively.
Yeah. What are we getting?
And then you've got to find a team with room that wants to spend that money, that's willing to take on this archetype, that doesn't care about the bad defense. Like, I think there's probably 2 or 3 teams that might fit that bill, and they may already have players.
The best way to trade him would be to throw him into something where you're saying, take him to take the money. We know you don't want him, but you're getting Dylan Cease from us, so you have to take Arraez, right? Yeah. So yeah, we'll keep tabs on that. But again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, because
if he gets traded, I think it's midway through the season.
I think that's fair.
I think if the Padres fall out of it, which I'm not necessarily expecting them to do, like, that's when he gets traded.
The high water mark of 10 homers and 354 average of 2023 was awesome, but we didn't know that it was coming the season that it did. We just talked about how batting average guys can go south the way Jeff McNeil did. That could happen to Luis Arraez too.
I think Arraez is the safest batting average only. Like,
I agree.
If you're gonna do a batting average only dude, this is the dude to do.
Right.
Because like, I think, like, I mean, we've seen it, right? Like, his worst batting average year was 294. Like,
that's amazing when that's your low bar.
While I don't like him because you have to really plan around drafting a guy like Luis Arraez, like, to get 600 plate appearances of a 300 plus average, like, I've got him
very impactful.
I have him projected for a 312 at like 615 plate appearances. Like, that's like that, like, and like, he had 672 last year. Like, that's an insane help to your batting average.
He was 7th among second basemen, because I was actually going to say, is a top 200 price point even fair? He's at 192.
It is
for Arraez. It actually is, yeah.
From a straight math perspective, it is.
Right.
From a roster construction perspective, that's where it becomes difficult. Like, he's probably way more valuable than a outside of top 200 pick.
Yeah.
But it just becomes so difficult to, where Luis Arraez makes sense is in an auction, because you can build
because you can map around it perfectly.
Ways.
Yep.
Like, whereas in a snake draft, it's a much more difficult, because you don't know, like, you can't go, well, now I need to go get. You don't want to have to push up a guy because you drafted Luis Arraez. Like,
yep, I think that's a great way to put it. Auction is the best spot for him, because you have so much more control over that planning, to where you can get your power around him.
And there are lots of people that go, I'm just never going to draft Luis Arraez. And so like, for me, like, throw Luis Arraez out early in an auction. If you get a good deal on him, then you can plan the rest of your auction around it, right?
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is wait for the end on Luis Arraez, because either you have planned to put him into your auction and now you need that batting average, and you're going to have to spend for it.
Right.
And someone else might go, oh, I need batting average too. And now it's a bidding war over Luis Arraez.
Because heaven forbid he's the last big average guy, then the price goes way up. You're right. That's a great call.
And I'll do an episode at some point on just auction, like straight auction strategies. Maybe I'll bring someone in for that. Or you and I can do it, or me and Jason. But like, this is why, like, don't just like go, oh, this is the most expensive guy left in the room right now, I'm going to throw him out. Like, you need to be much more strategic. Like, if you throw Luis Arraez out in the second round, yeah, maybe you don't get him, and that's fine. But the room might go quiet at $7, and you're like, okay, now I can plan for it.
Yeah, because you're right. There are some people that don't even put him on their list. Like he's a full cross off. I don't care. And I'm like that in draft. I almost never take Arraez in draft, but I do think the auction avenue is the right spot to fit him into a build and then really make it work. Because like you said, 600 plus plate appearances or at bats actually, because obviously that's more important than plate appearances. 637 last year, 574 the year before. Of that impactful batting average is massive. And in fact, by Steamer, he is third at second base, third highest dollar value behind Marte and Altuve. Part of that is second base is not mega deep. Part of that is huge impact from his batting average really driving it. So you make a great point where he's definitely worth a 192 pick by the math, but you have to construct the proper team or he will hurt you. All right, cool. Great insights there. We'll pick up the rest on Friday. We'll finish up second base. We got two more big tiers to get into and then kind of, whoever else. So it might be a little bit of a longer ep. And there are some guys here that we have double cover. Like we don't have to do Spencer Horwitz again. I won't bore you guys with that. We talked Lux when he got traded. So we'll have some guys that we'll go quickly on, but I'm going to go lay down for a little bit. Justin, I hope you have a wonderful week. We will talk later this week. Have a good one.
Take it easy.